Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Friday, August the 1st. Welcome to the month of August. I was thinking that there isn't really a very good song about the month of August. Can you think of any? Like September, you've got one. I think July, you've got one. June, you've got one. But I can't think of any great songs about the month of August. Maybe you do, but I can't. So I don't know. I just thought about that because I like to hear songs, to say the least. Well, quite a week. We're going to call this the week of the trade deals. Quite a few trade deals were done, and some were not done. You have to begin, of course, with the ones that were done. The European Union, that's a huge one. Japan, that's huge. South Korea, that's big. So those three right there are very significant. The UK, that's another one. So that's some big deals right there for the United States and the Trump administration. So those four, I think, will be good for the country. And then you have the countries that somehow didn't cut it on time. And the one that surprises me the most here is Canada. You know, what is wrong? Why couldn't they do something on time at least? Look what Mexico did. Mexico was given a 90-day, I guess, extension, if you will, to work that out. Canada could have done the same thing. They could have said, look, we're not quite ready. We got more negotiation to do. So please, let's reset the clock here. But they didn't do that, which makes me wonder if they were even negotiating at all. Because as I say, Mexico did get an extension, and that's because negotiations were taking place between Mexico and the United States. And look, from what I can tell, President Trump is the kind of guy that likes to negotiate. So if you're negotiating with him and he sees, that you're serious about it, he's going to work with you on it. I mean, that just seems to be his nature. He's a negotiator that's his personality. He likes to negotiate. So the fact that we couldn't get a deal done from Canada or with Canada on time, or not even an extension, is troubling. I was listening to a podcast this morning from Canada. There's a very interesting fellow up there who does a podcast, and I think he's from the Western provinces. He's from, I think, Alberta or Manitoba, one of those. And I had a chance to listen to him for the first time today. And he had a guest on, somebody who worked or works with manufacturing companies and small companies and so on. And this lady, the guest on the show, was talking about how frustrated a lot of Canadians are that the Carney administration, the prime minister and his administration, have not been able to work out a deal with the United States. Honestly, there's not that much to negotiate with Canada. There's not that much. I mean, our relationship with them is generally good. So it shouldn't be this complicated. So I don't know what the problem is. I have to tell you that I'm really surprised that we couldn't work something out with Canada, because that would have been, I think, good for Canada, and it would have been good for the United States. Now, what's going to happen now, of course, is that you're going to have all of these additional expenses for Canadian companies that sell in the United States, and that's almost their entire economy, 80% or something of their trade. And we'll see. Hopefully, we can resolve something. Look, I don't understand how it's taken this long to negotiate something with Canada. It's not like we have a very complicated relationship with them. I mean, it's fairly straightforward, and we should be able to work something out. I think one of the areas where the Americans are angry with the Canadians, or not angry, but let's say where there are issues with the Canadians, is on some of the dairy products. Some of the dairy farmers in Wisconsin and Michigan, that area there in the Midwest, some of those dairy farmers cannot sell in Canada because they have all kinds of restrictions. So I know that's always been an area of contention. So maybe that's what's going on here. But, I was listening, as I said, to this podcast from Canada. I'm going to try to remember the name of it. I'll remember the name, hopefully, before the end of the podcast. And the lady who was the guest was saying, look, we're very fortunate that we have the United States as a neighbor. Not only do we do business with them, but they protect us. And that's a point that I think gets lost a lot of times, how much we protect Canada, because they've downsized their military so honestly, such a frightening degree that they cannot defend themselves. If a Chinese submarine or Chinese ships show up in Vancouver sometime in the next few weeks and say, "Hey, give us your oil, or we're going to take it from you," Canada would put up a fight, but not very long, because they just don't have the resources. Unfortunately, at one time during World War II, I read that they had a tremendous navy for a country of its size, but not anymore. I don't know what they've done, but anyway, so I'm very disappointed that there was no trade deal that included Canada, because I was kind of looking forward to that. And again, you look down at Mexico, they got an extension, so they were able to persuade the Trump administration that we need to keep talking. Unfortunately, that did not happen at all with Canada, so that's not a good thing. I have a post over at the American Thinker today talking about this young woman who, I'm sure you've heard the story. I don't remember the young woman's name. I think it's Sydney is her first name. Very attractive young woman. Obviously, I guess she's a model. I don't know much about her story. Forgive me. I'm not familiar that much with her story, but she obviously looks very good. A young woman in her 20s, and she looks very good wearing jeans. I mean, she's a good-looking young woman. So if you're a company that makes jeans, or you want to promote jeans, that's exactly who you want promoting it. Well, this has become one of the silliest scandals or crazy moments in the history of the United States. You have people talking about white supremacy, because I guess what got them all excited was that there was a reference in the commercial to or Sydney has good genes, or looks good in jeans, or has good genes. That's what it was. And of course, people were talking about genes, your background, or whatever your genes are, part of your biology, I guess. I don't remember too much from biology, but whatever it is, people got all bent out of shape because they thought this was a white supremacy commercial. And I'm sitting there saying, how crazy must you be to somehow think that this is a white supremacy commercial? How crazy can you be? Nothing to do with white supremacy. It's a good young woman who looks good in jeans. I'm sorry, but I don't get this. But I will tell you this: it really amazes me to what extent some people in this country are, especially some of these crazy feminists, are willing to go to turn off the male vote. They already have problems with men voting Democrat, and I don't think this is going to help them a lot with young men, because I guarantee you that many of the people who really liked that ad were young men. And now these young men are going to be somehow drawn into a conversation about white supremacy. Got to be kidding me. You have to be kidding me. This is absolutely insane. I've got a post coming out Saturday morning. Wanted to let you know about it. And some of you are familiar with Ruy Teixeira. He's a professor here in Texas, and he's been writing a lot of great articles over the last few years, warning the Democrat Party that they're losing the working class, and especially Hispanics. And the reason they're losing them is primarily because of values, things like what we were just talking about, this scandal over a young woman wearing jeans, and also issues like, for example, transgenders, and in the case of South Texas, also because the oil business is extremely important in South Texas. And it means a lot to the Hispanics who live in South Texas, because they work in many of the refineries or all of the indirect companies that are in the oil business. And he's been warning them, and he's warning them again. And today he features in his post, or his article, this latest Wall Street Journal that came out, the poll basically indicating how much the voters prefer Republicans over Democrats. And Mr. Teixeira is not saying that the public loves Trump. He's not saying that. But he was saying, look, he's a much better alternative because the Democrats do not offer an alternative. They had nothing to offer except we hate Trump or he's a dictator or all this garbage that they throw at you. So I would recommend that you check out that post. It'll be out Saturday morning, and check it out because well, I think you'll understand a little bit better why the Democrats are in such trouble. Well, it's been a crazy week, as I say, the week of all of the trade deals, and today we also got this jobs report, which is a little confusing, and I'm going to try to look into it a little bit more and talk about it in our next post. But it's a little bit confusing. On one hand, they're telling us that jobs are not being created, but then on the other hand, they're saying that wages are up. So I need to get into it more because I just don't think that it makes a lot of sense just repeating the headline of that story. So we will get into that more on our next video cast or podcast, whatever you prefer. Thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye bye, everybody.